Hello everyone, this is Manuel from IBAN here in Brussels. Today is a very shining day and we are all here listening for this great webinar hosted by Alexandre Mencik. He's an entrepreneur and business angel, and today he will talk about this space funding opportunities for space tech companies. So I'm really pleased to give the stage to Alexandre. Alexandre.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I will try to share my screen. Is it right?
Yes. Oops. 1 second. I'm trying. Oh. Okay, now I see you. You can start sharing your screen.
Okay, do you see the screen?
Yes, can you put full screen?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Shall we start? You hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Alexandre Mencik. Thanks for the kind introduction, Emmanuel, and thanks for the invite. The topic today is space funding. So funding by the public authorities for companies who are active in the space sector. What I propose to do during 30 minutes is to ask ourselves the following questions. So why are you listening? Why this may be relevant for you? Have a look about the available programs, and deep dive into the how questions, so how to find opportunities and how to apply for funding. And then we will wrap up with a few recommendations, key takeaways, and I think we will have some time for a Q&A session. And as Manuel mentioned, we will share the slides, and the slides contain a large number of annexes, which hopefully give you more information, because we could, of course, only go into the high-level issues here during these 30 minutes. So I hope you find something of interest for you during this webinar, and if you have any questions, I will try to do my best to answer. So why this may be relevant for you? Well, I think, I don't know about you, but I think public support remains vital, especially during this crisis. It's maybe the option, the only option for a few companies who, unfortunately are not able to operate as usual, and it could also be the option of last resort. So I think the crisis exemplified the need for public support, and that's the real topic of this seminar. But it's not easy. It's not easy to navigate through all the available options. Many different programs, different rules, different authorities, and there is no one-stop shop, unfortunately. As we will see, the programs are managed by different authorities and they don't talk together. So I'm not aware of any way to find all programs in one website or one way. And it's a moving target. It's a moving target for two main reasons. One, as you may know, we are changing the budgetary period in the Union, in the European Union. We are ending the current period and entering into a new budgetary period which will last until 2027. So for instance, the program Horizon 2020, as its name indicates, will end this year and then will be replaced by a program called Horizon Europe, but which is not yet implemented. And so that's the first moving target issue we have. On top of that, since governments have decided to shut down the planet, they now have the responsibility to support the economy. And hopefully, and very rightly so, they are proposing new programs to support the economy and to help recovering. But those new programs, including, for instance, a recovery fund of up to €1 trillion, possibly, are still under discussions. And if not yet, they are not yet implemented, even though, as we all know, support is maybe vitally important for companies right now. So not easy, but hopefully we will try to get some clarity about what's maybe available. And I hope you're hearing me well and seeing the slides well, and let me know if not the case. But so this is and I will maybe just put it like that. Hopefully that's better for you. So this is a list of programs which may be relevant for your project or activity. I try to group them into 3 categories. One is the category of programs linked to the EU. So apart from Horizon 2020, which I hope you know because it's the largest European program, there are other additional programs which may be helpful, like the European Innovation Council, COSME, and LIFE, and KIC, which are linked to environmentally relevant projects. Then there are the 2 large banks and funds, which are the European Investment Bank, the largest lending bank in the world, and the European Investment Fund, which is focused on helping SMEs. So that's one category. Second category is what I call the agencies. The agencies are of 2 kinds. One, you have the European Space Agency, which is a totally different animal, and I have a specific annex for that. So as you know, for instance, the UK is a member of ESA, but no longer of the Union. And then you have additional agencies, such as the GNSS agency, which may be becoming the EU agency for the space program, EUMETSAT, which is focused on meteorology, the 2 EU agencies focused on environment and maritime safety. And then there is a catch-all category where, frankly, I put all other relevant programs, and they're not all listed here, but it's all additional programs which may be helpful. And again, you have more information in the annexes. So what are the key questions you should ask yourself? And of course, there are many ways to look at, to find opportunities, but I think it's always relevant, just for the purpose of this webinar, to keep in mind, I'm not looking at programs run by the national authorities or at regional or local level. So if we're not talking about a specific German program to support German countries, we are focusing only at the European level. So that's the first question, I think, to ask yourself. Then next question is, which type of projects and what are the maturity levels if I'm doing an R&D project? So the type of project, of course, you have to define that, and look, maybe by looking to the annex, you will find more information. But you could be involved in a very horizontal project, like a digital project, or you could be very focused on monitoring the oceans, for instance. So that's a key question you have to ask yourself, and it will hopefully help you finding opportunities. Then, which type of organization I am? I guess maybe some of the participants are startups. Well, startups in the EU. So if you are a startup of less than 10 persons, you are called a micro enterprise, and you fall into the SME category. And if you are larger and you're lucky enough to have more than 10 employees in your company, then you become a small company. And that's the key question, whether you are in the SME or non-SME category. There are many programs which focus entirely on SMEs and which are specifically relevant for you. Others don't focus on that, but may be still relevant for SMEs. So it's a way to find your way. It's to determine whether you are not an SME, which I guess is likely given the audience. Then the type of funding, a key distinction is, of course, whether I want to receive or I hope to receive a grant, which is a form of donation, maybe a prize, or I'm more seeking a loan, or even maybe to ask for equity participation in my company. That is a key distinction you should ask yourself. And then the last question is, of course, the question you all have in mind, I guess, is how much funding you can get. And that is, of course, highly dependent on the type of program. So once you have sorted out these questions and ask yourself these questions, what can you find? Well, I'm not going to go into the details. I've tried to highlight a few points which may be of interest for you. What I want to mention, first of all, is Horizon 2020, which will become Horizon Europe next year, which is the largest, is not going to grant you a loan or a fortiori not going to invest in equity in your company, but it's of course a very helpful program, including for SMEs. And but you have to also find you could look beyond Europe and Horizon Europe and find other alternatives. So, for instance, the European Innovation Council is able to invest in equity in your company. However, it's an option of last resort, and you have to think carefully before asking, proposing an investment by the AIC Council, because it may be, not necessarily, but it may be that private investors will no longer be welcome to participate. The AIC has different types of programs. I just wanted to highlight that it can invest in equity, and it will be the European Commission making a direct equity investment in companies. It's an interesting ongoing development. The European Space Agency is in itself a very interesting public authority to support your business, but it cannot grant loans or equity. It's focused on grants and tenders. Don't forget, there is the European Defence Agency, and there are ongoing calls for tenders which could support dual-use technology. So even if you're not focusing entirely on the defense sector, but your technology has a dual use, maybe it could be useful to look to the European Defence Agency and what's going on there. And then last but not least, the investment bank and the investment funds are helpful for SMEs. So they are very large institutions, but they can directly help you, but they don't grant grants and tenders. It's only about loans and equity, and they don't grant prizes. So hopefully you get more information by these slides and try to find opportunities. Now, let's assume you have found something which may be of interest. What may be the proposed next actions? You may have other views, but I think it's always useful to verify the admissibility and eligibility criteria. To give you an example, the question which practically is important, whether I can file an application alone as a company, let's find a consortium, and a consortium is generally 3 entities in 3 different member states. That is something which will depend not only on the specific programs, but sometimes the call for tender, so the tender documents themselves will define whether you can file alone or via a consortium. So it's important to have a look to those documents. It is, of course, useful to define your strategy and, if needed, the best consortium you can think of. And then, of course, we recommend to file high-quality proposals. That's common sense, but it's not. It's easier to say than to do it. It's quite a task to draft those proposals. Once you have done all that, then you can start gateways to file your proposals. I'm not going to go into all of them. In the next 6, you have a lot of information on gateways, but maybe just keep 3 things in mind. CEDIA is very useful because CEDIA is the gateway for all AU-linked programs and tenders. So by going that and clicking on the hyperlink there, you will already find quite useful information. All the tenders for all the programs linked to the EU, with the EU are regrouped into the TED, e-tendering, e-procurement platform. Very useful platform, and you could also set up an alert mechanism to be informed about developments. And then, as you may know, ESA, for the European Space Agency, you would need to register, and then you would be able to consult the details of the intention to tender, which are regularly presented by the European Space Agency on their EMIT website. And there is much more gateways. I'm afraid you have to find your way to file your proposal through various different gateways. But hopefully things have been slightly regrouped, and with CEDIA and TED and the ESA, I think you are already in good hands. So how to increase your chance to get funding? And well, as I said, it's a moving target. And I'm afraid you have to constantly monitor developments and go to several websites because there is no one-stop shop to monitor those developments. But it's also, in my view, a way to increase your chance not to miss any opportunity. As I said, I really recommend you take the time to carefully read all the documents. You will gain more information on how the program is structured, what the authorities are looking for. You may find out that you cannot submit as a company, you need a consortium, or vice versa. There are useful information in these documents, and I really encourage you to take the time to read them all. And it's a pain because they can be very lengthy. Don't give up. Resilience, resilience, resilience. Keep going in submitting high quality proposals via different gateways. It's it's not because you've been rejected that you're blacklisted. You could always maybe find another gateway to submit your proposal. I always encourage you to go a bit beyond the borders and look beyond. So, for instance, don't assume that Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe, despite its name, requires that the R&D takes place exclusively in Europe. It's not the case. There are 129 countries associated with Horizon Europe, and therefore you could have R&D taking place in Israel, in Singapore, in South Africa, and somewhere in the EU. That's feasible. Also, I always suggest to look beyond Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe is a great program, but the chance of success are around 12%. That's not ideal, of course. You have one chance out of 5, basically, to succeed, or even less. But if you go into more sector-specific programs, your chances of success may be higher. There may be less money available, but you have a better chance to succeed. And then if you want to retain something from this presentation, and I'm sure you're aware of that, but it's worthwhile reinforcing it. Sustainable development is the way to go, not only from a philosophical point of view, and everybody could have his own views in this respect, but simply because at the EU level, it's becoming almost a condition, a precondition. You already have programs now. We will not fund anything which is not in favor of the environment. But believe me, with the crisis and all those ongoing new programs, it may be a formal condition. So Annex 8 will give you more information on how to look to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and try to adapt your program to ensure that you fit one or two, even more UN SDGs, because that, I think, really increases your chance to get funding. So key takeaways, and then we can, you could ask questions, and I have gone through very quickly, but happy to give you more information during the Q&A. As we have seen, there are many different programs available. I believe how you count that around 40 different programs may be relevant for space-related business and high-tech industries. So that's a lot. That means it's a good and bad news. I mean, good news, you have to, you increases your chance to get something, but you have to monitor carefully all those ongoing developments. Hopefully, if you focus on these 5 questions and take those 3 actions, you may make progress. Not necessarily, but it could help. I think you, as an investor in companies, it's always, I think, well supported by private investors that you are seeking public support, but you also, of course, have to find the right balance. You drafting proposals for funding and doing nothing else than that. And of course, you may be able to generate more value or even revenues by focusing on a different approach. So, you have to take in, for instance, on the horizon, I think on average, it would take 1 to 3 months to draft a high-quality proposal. That's a lot. Don't forget that there are companies specializing in helping you. Some of them, I'm aware of, are working on a success fee basis. Therefore, if you get funding, they get reimbursed. But if you're not getting funding, they will not charge anything. So that may be an approach which you may consider taking. And I mean, not recommend a particular company. That's not my role. But don't forget, there are people specializing in increasing your chance of success. What I'm involved in is to try to help you by answering questions to find the right programs. I'm working on an online platform. And then, as I said, my key takeaway is really that the space sector can contribute to all 17 UN SDGs. That's unique, I think. I'm not aware of any other sector which can contribute to all 17 goals. Of course, space cannot solve all problems, but can contribute to solving problems. And I think that's an opportunity for our sector. So I thank you for your attention. And I'm happy to take any questions you.
Okay, thanks, Alexandre. Sometimes I got a little bit of connection but I got the entire message. So if you have a question, please write in the chat so we can
I stop
share.
my screen or not?
You can keep your screen.
Okay.
It's fine. And so we have a comment from Jan. ESA is currently scoping a new initiative, Aspire, inviting SMEs to provide feedback, ideas on program addressing the SDGs as part of a post-COVID-19 recovery. Do you know this program?
Yes, I know. I think it's an ongoing development, but it could be very.
Okay. Do you have more information about this? Is ongoing? You said that means it will start next year or this year.
We don't know yet, and I will have to update the presentation based on all ongoing developments. But hopefully, it's all about the EU budget discussions. So they have to conclude this year normally, but for the moment it's unpredictable when they will be concluded. What we know is the Commission has to amend the EU budget for 21-27 based on the crisis. So we should expect some delays there.
Okay. We have a question from Mardan. Just a quick comment. As I know, SME for European Union means a company that has, I think, more than 25 people.
Yes.
Okay. So question from
Mardan. So here you have, if you see my screen, okay. You have the different categories. So an SME has between 10 and 49, but a micro enterprise is in fact considered as an SME. It's a specific category, rarely used. So take it that between 1 and 49, you are an SME, you are an S, and then between 50 and 249, you are a medium-sized enterprise.
Okay, indeed, the question from Mardan is if being a micro enterprise right now, they can apply for SME funding. So, as I understand,
yes,
they enter in this SME.
So yes, that's a very important question. And so yes, if you are micro, you can apply for SME funding, of course, and on top, you can benefit from programs which grants you, for instance, loans for micro enterprise.
Okay, thanks. Now we have another question from Simon. Okay, with Horizon Europe, seems that there will be less funding opportunities for startups. Which opportunities, direction should a startup then with a small team consider as a primary focus?
So, well, there is a risk, it's clear, that there is less funding, but we don't know yet. It's not yet defined. I mean, so, and the sector is, of course, pushing to ensure that there is decent funding available. So the answer is we don't know. There is a risk because, of course, if the EU is managing a trillion euro recovery fund, there may not be money anymore to support R&D. Now, I hope it's not going to be the case, but nothing is secured until we have an agreement at EU level between the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council on the budget for 2021-27.
Okay. Do you know when they will make a public decision, or you know if they already said something or?
Transparent about the ongoing discussions, but it has to be adopted by the European Parliament. So I could only encourage you, as Ivan has already done, to lobby to ensure that the EU don't forget the space sector.
Yes, yes. I also noticed that creating a consortium and applying for EU calls, then trying to insert your startup, your project inside a broader project with other EU partners could be a good way to also create partnerships and try to get funding. So not just applying as a single company, maybe for the previous SM instrument, but I think this way also to apply as a consortium could be a great business opportunities. What do you think?
Absolutely agree. You are very smart and knowledgeable, as always. Emmanuel, I think, no, it's right. I mean, small is beautiful. It remains the case. And also 99% of the people employed in the EU are employed by SMEs. So hopefully you recognize that. So yes, having an SME in a consortium, in my view, is a plus. It's always also useful for you to gain more information about what the other members of the consortium are doing. And of course, information sharing will be, you may gain a lot of information and experience by participating to a consortium and as an SME. And you could argue you're increasing the chance and the consortium.
Okay, thanks. Okay, questions are running. So a question from Rene. Where can I find help, information about how to register a new space tech startup or micro enterprise? If I may say, I think it depends on the country where you're based, and it's for funding opportunity. I don't think, Alexandre, it's necessary to be qualified as space tech company, right? For funding opportunity, just the topic, I mean, the technologies that you are using.
Yes.
Is
yes. So the company registration is governed at national level. If you are in Belgium, you have to follow Belgian law to register your company and set it up. Same situation, unless you're creating a European company, which I would not recommend. And then, yes, I mean, there are specific programs for SMEs.
Okay, now we have a question that is related to also my comment. You mentioned consortium, how strong your case is if we present as consortium. It's a bit confused question. Mardan, if you can try to maybe reframe the sentence. You mentioned consortium has strong, your case is if we present as a consortium. I think the question, Alexandre, is if being a consortium can strengthen the project of the companies, probably.
I would say no, in a sense, it's in the eligibility and admissibility criteria. So they will simply say you can file as an SME only, or one company filing a proposal, or you have to be a consortium. So it's a black and white issue. You are either alone or a part of a consortium.
Okay, and the second question is more for Iban. What is our view for EU private launch provider startups? Okay, IBAN is a European organization that represents business angels and investors, but we do not invest directly. As IBAN, our members invest. So if you're looking for funding, the best way is to reach our members But we as IBAN, we don't put you directly in touch with them. It will be too much work, even if it could be very useful for you. As IBAN, our role is to increase the number of investors around Europe and increase networking between investors, so we can also foster cross-border, cross-European investments. So this is our role as IBAN. I hope I answered to your question. Now we have a question from Daniel. In the actual situation, the COVID-19 impacting seriously the space and financial activities. I mean, is this impacting the situation, the space financial activities, or not?
Yeah, of course. OneWeb has filed for bankruptcy, as you may have seen. There are companies which are really struggling. There are rumors about some satellite operators who may be bankrupt. The space sector has been badly hit. What I think is interesting is in the US, there has been very strong voice from the defense sector, for instance, to support the space sector. Not necessarily the case in Europe. So yes, the short answer is yes, the sector is struggling, probably a bit less than the aerospace. I mean, the air sector, I think. But, you know, it could be better. If there would be for public support, that could do no harm, I think.
Okay. You also added a comment. A lot of the space companies are long-term, are really long-term projects. So the delay will not be so serious. I think this comment is quite connected to your answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Mm-hmm.
Now a question from Hussein. I really hope I'm saying their name correctly, but anyway, let's move forward. What is your take on non-private funding? Is venture funding a feasible approach for a startup? What is your take on this?
Sure, it is. There is only one venture fund for the space sector, which is Serafim in the UK, and which may not be available, of course, for your companies, or may be available, but it's a small fund. There are then, I would say, around 10 to 20 VCs which have invested in the space sector, which may be worthwhile contacting. Then there are funds which have just been set up in Luxembourg. There is one in France which may be set up, not necessarily, which will be focusing on space. So yes, VCs are, I think, a helpful contributor to the funding of SMEs. That said, I always feel that angels are even more helpful sometimes, because they are investing generally their own money and are deeply involved in helping the company. They have even a more interest to help. And there are many, of course, other sources of funding. Hopefully, in this presentation, you will find others. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. Now a request. Yes, the presentation will be available after this webinar, and also the report that Alexandre made is very, very good and very well done and very well recommended. So please stay in touch with our social media channels. We will spread the news through this net. Okay, yes, Alexandre also showed his contact. You'll receive 100 of emails, Alexandre. You. Okay, now we have an interesting No, we have a comment from Jens. He said that does every space funding opportunity require a consortium?
No.
No.
There are different programs which can be useful for SMEs only and not within a consortium. So for instance, here on this column, you would all those programs may be available for an SME only, filing itself.
Okay, thanks. Jan Doni also said that he understood that thankfully COVID-19 is not impacting public agency space financing. In fact, there are some specific actions. So, well, I think this is good news. And also a little bit connected to what you said, indeed, as understood, there is a little bit of impact. But at the same time, space companies.
It really depends. I mean, Horizon 2020, no impact, but it ends this year. So it's very, Horizon Europe will happen. No worries. The European Defence Agency is currently running calls for tender, and so you could say no impact. The banks are increasing their support and the fund as well. So you could argue in this respect, the crisis tends to increase the level of support. The key issue is really how the budget will be determined and who will get the money. And there may be more money for recovery and less money for research and development. That is still under discussion.
Yeah, thanks. Now 3 questions, so be ready, Alexandre. When will the announcement of competition from companies supporting startups for 2021 appear? I think is connected to Horizon Europe. Indeed, the second question is, where is the best place to find partners for a consortium? And the third question is, if you can point out some companies that can help on writing applications for a success fee.
Okay, yeah, so I think Horizon Europe has a tool which enable you to research partners. So that's the second question, sorry. But the first question is, we don't know. I mean, Horizon Europe is still under discussion. We have not seen a draft text yet. There are rumors the draft text will be available before the summer break. Then it has to be adopted by Parliament and the Council. So normally, and I think it will happen before the end of the year. Horizon Europe will be available before the end of the year, and it will start issuing calls for tenders and grants beginning of next year. That time money will be available. That's another question. So as I said, finding partners, there is a tool under Horizon Europe. I can send the link for that. And then the third question, remind me, Emmanuel, it was on
the third one.
Yes.
Is if you know companies that write proposals.
I know a few. I mean, I have general good experience because they are really smart people. So but I've not compiled a list. So I can only make a recommendation for 1 or 2 specific sectors. I'm not aware of a list of companies which exist, but it's something I'm working on, and so it could be helpful. But of course, by googling on the net, you relevant companies, and as I said, I have generally a good experience with them. So you're taking a bit of a risk, but not that much. And I would recommend you working with a company. Some of them are very expensive, and but they are also very good. Others are less expensive, but those who are very expensive know everything, you need to know about how to draft and file good proposals.
Thanks, Alexandre. The next question is a company that apparently is helping microsatellites to go in orbit, some launch for, I don't know if it's a launcher provider. They want to know if they already received support from ESA. Can this be a limitation to get other EU funding?
No, unless the same cost will be financed twice. And even you could argue this is only for the EU. So the short answer is no. There is a rule in the EU that you cannot finance twice the same costs, but that's for all programs linked to the European Union. Since the ESA is not linked, I would say no. Don't hesitate to apply at another level than ESA.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood the question, but anyway, it was quite good question and answer. ESA is investing in new launchers in the space industry. Do you think European Union will follow a different direction, considering microsatellites launch providers?
Okay. Yes, so ESA has, it's mentioned here, in fact, a future launcher preparation program. I don't know if there is something else. I'm only aware of that program. So I would recommend you check on ESA website. I think the CNES is working with ESA on a different approach as well. So there are things going on between the CNES and ESA on launchers.
And I may add something. I know that the European Union is financing 20 million prize for launchers. So I think it's a European, I don't remember if the Research Council or the Commission directly. But I'm sure there is a prize, and the deadline is either June or July of this year. So if interested for these launchers, for small satellites, please try to make a quick search online. And then another question from Mardan. Okay. I always want to ask this question. Okay, if let's say I have a private investor not in European Union, and who is interested in funding an European company, how is it done? Where can I find the information for that? For maybe deal, I think this is a legal or deal issue.
Information to, it's not.
Apparently they, is it possible that a non-European investor can invest in European companies, but at the same time these relationships to be managed? So,
well, no, I think so. I mean, well, in general, no, because what is defined, you are an EU company if you are registered in the EU, not if you only have EU-based investors. That said, you have to be careful about export control rules. So you, for instance, US companies are prevented to China, European companies not. But of course, having investors from the China, Russia, maybe Iran, may not necessarily be politically the right move. But formally, there is no. You could still apply for funding. It may be that it put you at a disadvantage, but honestly, the key is to find this financial support for your business. So I would not. I would recommend not to turn out financial support coming from any country, but you have to bear in mind that it may put you at a disadvantage, but not necessarily.
Well, thanks, Alexander. If I may add something from a IBAN point of view, I would say that considering that the question is if, that means that probably this entrepreneur doesn't have a non-European investor. I would say that in general it's very, very difficult that a non-European investor invest in your company if you don't have already an investors that can guarantee for you. It's still difficult for an investor, let's say in Germany, investing in Italian companies because, and we are in Europe, okay? And so the easiest thing for you will be to find a local investor that has international connections. And if you are lucky to get a non-European or not an investor that is not from your country, I'm sure the investor already has the information to deal this relationship. So don't be too afraid about this. Now we have a comment from Daniela. She is saying that indeed also Enterprise Europe Network is can help on funding partners. So for sorry, so if you're looking for partners for your consortia, please also take a look to Enterprise Europe Network. Okay. What about African countries as partners or tenders? Alexandre, are they also in the network of the companies, of the countries for European Union calls?
Yes, it depends on the programs. So Horizon Europe, since it's such a huge program, has 129 countries. So probably most of the African continent is part of that. So yes, the short answer for Horizon Europe is yes. But other programs, it may be more difficult. Some of them are focusing exclusively on the union. So you have to go back to the program text and documents and see on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. Okay, now we have a question from Rosario that is also working for SpaceUp. Let's see if a question for support for SME also, yes, also SME for Space is a European organization, partners of SpaceUp. You are more than welcome to reach them for support and ideas and partnerships.
Hello, Rosario.
He's promoting himself. It's good way.
It's a very. I would also recommend that you link with them. It's a very good organization.
Yeah. Alexandre, questions are over, and also our time is over. I would like really to thank you very, very much for this presentation, and especially for your work. You made a very good report. You listed a lot of opportunities for companies, and as IBAN and as a SpaceUp consortium, we will be very happy to spread your great work and your efforts. And well, thank you again. Thank you very much. And I'm sure this will have a very good impact for space tech entrepreneurs. And thanks.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for these kind words, and thank to all for your attention. And I wish you good luck. I hope you will find some money.
I'm sure. And business opportunities. Remember, money is not everything. Try also to find partnerships.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks, Alexandre. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.